And we are live. Well,
What's up, RUNAMUCK MMA crowd?
Yep. Dropping
Oh, are we dropping the fake pen?
It's a real pen, but I'm using it for fake purposes. Anyway, so yes, how's it do, y'all? Up in the crib. Yeah. Oh, I punched myself in the jaw. Oh man. Anyway, let's just get into this before I hurt myself some more. Oh my god. That really hurt. So
all
yeah.
right. So really quickly, guys.
Yes, the UFC Fight Night in Vegas, number 6, happened this past weekend, yesterday, and it's been a while for me at least. I know Lincoln watches the prelims a lot more than I do, but I had actually had time to sit down and watch the prelims yesterday, so I just wanted to give a quick little props to so and so and so and so. We've got Erwin Rivera versus Ali Al-Kaisi, who is the first fighter from the country of Jordan to join the UFC. But it was Rivera who took a decision victory over him in the bantamweight division. And then we have Yusuf Zalet, the Moroccan Devil, who is now
The
up there.
Moroccan Devil.
Yep, and cool badass nicknames, versus Slippery Peter Barrett. This one was really cool, just real quick, because this was the one with the spinning side kick right to the face, where it caused like a sort of a flash knockout in the first round, but it too also went to decision for Yusuf, so good for him. In the featherweight division, also, the previous one was featherweight, we had Gavin Tucker versus Justin James. This one was a really cool back and forth because we had Gavin Tucker from Nova Scotia going to town on James, but James actually got a really nice uppercut knockdown in the first round. And
Thought
then,
it was over.
Yeah, I thought it was over. And then Gavin Tucker came back, worked
to
in.
win 2 rounds, and then get the sub.
Yeah, what was that, a rear naked, I believe?
Yes, sir.
And then, so he wins that. Then we moved on to the middleweight division, and we got big old mullet man, Andrew Sanchez.
What a damn American treasure, that boy.
Oh, yeah. Took it to town on Wellington Turman. Got his KO TKO in round number 1. So good for him. Then we had the lightweight division. This one was pretty interesting. This was Nasrat Haprast. Even the commentators were having trouble with this name last night, against Alex Munoz, who is apparently a Contender Series alumni. He was 6-0 going into the bout, but he just suffered his first loss against Nasrat and is lost the decision to Mr. Nasrat. This was also a pretty interesting bout because there was a lot going on here. There was eye pokes, there was cup checks, and there was even some short grabbing. So, but it still came out pretty well for the Afghani German fighter here. And then we moved on to the middleweight. This was young Kevin Holland, who we talked about last week, who unfortunately his opponent, Trevin Giles, fainted just before he made it out to the Octagon. And then we had Kevin Holland here, who got his he got the fight he had wanted. Well, obviously not the fight with Trevin Giles, but he got to fight, which is what he was hoping for. And he got the KO TKO in round number 3 against Joaquin Buckley, who is who just fought in LFA apparently last week. Got himself a round 2 KO there, but unfortunately came up just a little bit short. No pun intended, considering the massive size difference between the gentlemen. I know, right? Thank you. I'm great. Just kidding. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then we finished off the night in the prelims with a welterweight bout between Tim Means and Loreno Staropoli. This one was also pretty great. Tim Means probably stole the show with his head kick knockdown of Staropoli in the second round. So that was pretty nice. He wins the decision there, and props to all those gentlemen. That was a great set of prelims. So moving on to the main card, we'll go ahead and we'll start with the way we usually start in these formats, is with the main event, and then we'll work our way backwards with all the other smaller stuff. So I'll let you take it from here, Lincoln.
So was a really good fight for the most part. We saw Oleinik kind of winning the first round with his more technical grappling and changing of scenarios that Derek Lewis had trained for, but still fell victim to a very near submission. I thought if he had employed, or if he had held on to the scarf hold choke that he had implied the first time, because he got it the first time, he got out of it, then he got him again with it towards the end of the round.
Yep.
If he had been able to hold it down that first time he got it for the rest of the round, it could have been a closer. He could have possibly gotten a sub there.
Right. Yeah, I remember I just got through watching Derek Lewis's post-fight interview with Megan O'Leary, and it was Megan O'Leary who asked the question, what did you think about that choke? Were you afraid of any of the submissions in that fight? And Derek Lewis said, obviously I wasn't very afraid of most of the submissions, but that one right there at the end, his last one he attempted, was very, very threatening. Derek Lewis himself said that I actually came really close to tapping, which is evident by the way he, in the fight, is holding his hand up in the air, just suspended in the air, like he's that close.
There was a second though that I thought he did tap, because if you watch it back, there's a moment where he puts his hand on the ground.
Oh yeah.
And he kind of does this. He does this little number, and I thought, oh, is he tapping? And he might have just been like reaching a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was this interview right here, but yeah, it was. It was.
And then he pulled off the quick round 2 KO, flying me into a overhand.
Yeah, it was very nice. And then he just gets on the ground and he hammers away at him.
Finishes him the Derek Lewis way.
Oh yeah, pound. Yeah. And then of course he does his signature pound the chest, pound the ground. Yeah.
I'll put my phone there.
But yeah, that was very nice. You could easily tell that with the progression of Derek Lewis, he's been working a lot more on his conditioning. And yes, he's working with the technique of his grappling more, which is nice to see. At the end of the first round, both fighters actually had equal amounts of control time, with Derek Lewis just leading in a few seconds. And that definitely had a lot more to do with the fact that Derek Lewis was just able to throw that extra 40 pounds of weight on him that Oleinik was missing at the weigh-ins. And then however much more after Derek hydrates, and gets up to full capacity. But I mean, the biggest thing for me going into the fight was, yes, obviously Oleinik has his submission game and his grappling game, but I think for Derek Lewis, it just came down to his sheer power that he had.
Because if you saw, there was an exchange where he just kind of ragdolled him onto the floor.
Yes,
and you could see the very different strength difference right there.
I mean, he pretty much just threw him against the cage and just lands on top of him.
Yeah, he just kind of had an underhook and he went.
yeah. And then obviously getting a KO, TKO, you show that power a little bit more. But it was just it was exactly the kind of fight that I knew it was going to be, because Oleinik, he's a tough guy, and he's gotten some KO victories of his own. However, we both knew that the main strength for him going into this was going to be his submission game, and we both also knew that due to the size and the power difference between the two, getting a conventional takedown was just not going to be possible for Oleinik, which is why it made sense.
Them, really,
for either of them, for sure. Because we don't necessarily know Lewis for his takedowns, and then just with Oleinik, it was like the only way he could get said takedown was off the reversal of Lewis's own. When Lewis was on top of him, had 2 minutes of control time, and then was just working the entire time, and then Oleinik was able to utilize his jiu-jitsu and kind of reverse the roles, flip Lewis on his back, and then that's where he started working the bulldog choke, the scarfel choke, And then, as we saw, he had that pretty tight, so tight, in fact, Lewis, of course, is about to tap, but was able to. I mean, really, I'd say the biggest issue there is that Derek Lewis is just such a meaty man. Getting a choke like that is just going to be difficult to begin with. I mean, he's such a big guy, and Oleinik has got a smaller stature that it was just going to be hard to fully wrap something like that up and finish Lewis from that position, even though he almost did it. You hear Lewis gargling his breath. He's this close. His hand is suspended in the air, and you
only got 10 more seconds.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much at the end of that round when it was employed, and then Lewis was able to tough it out and get through it, and then start off the second round, obviously, with his energy. And Derek Lewis has always been that kind of guy where if he sees his opportunity where, I can get this guy now, I see him wobble, I see him go down, he's got that killer instinct where if he sees the blood in the water, he goes in for the kill immediately right off the bat.
And then he usually gets it too.
Yeah, and then he usually gets it because he sees it, he goes for it. We see that all the time against Brown, Volkov, Tybura.
Do you know what question I asked myself while I was watching it?
What's that?
What if I'm all for making more weight divisions, but specifically the mid heavyweight division.
Like a light heavyweight and then a mid heavyweight and then a heavyweight?
Yeah. Where it's like 220 to 240 or something like that. 245.
I mean, it would make sense because that's a lot of weight difference in there.
Yeah, because I feel like there should be more weight divisions, and then that breaks up the whole we have to have interim champions, so there's always a champion at this time or whatever. If you had more divisions, more championships, and then people don't have to cut weight as much or whatever. But right. I was just thinking of the mid. I was just like this one particularly. I was just like, what if there was a mid heavyweight division?
Well, then Oleinik would be dominating.
It'd be like Oleinik, and then maybe Gustafsson and John Jones most likely.
Yeah.
Like just some of the bigger light heavyweights and smaller heavyweights just meet in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, it would definitely help the weight issue we noticed in this fight because, I mean, this has got to be one of the biggest gaps between one fighter and this fight. It's literally at the lowest weight you could possibly be. I mean, 225, but I mean, he literally was 227. Oleinik came in at, and then Derek, of course, is all the way at the other end of the spectrum at 265. The maximum weight you can be, and that's 40 pounds. And with heavyweights, you may not think, that much more weight is going to make all the difference, but.
I mean, even when we were in wrestling, they were just like, yeah, you can't wrestle more than like 10 pounds or so.
Yeah, it just kind of creates that issue of, well, now I have to be able to not only fight somebody who is already super powerful and super big, I have to fight him with a 40-pound difference between the two of us, 38 pounds, 40 pounds, Yeah.
And that's just how Oleinik's always done it too.
Yeah. I don't know what success he's had at light heavyweight, but I mean, he seems very comfortable at heavyweight. And he's had tons of success there as well. This is not a major setback for him because he's always been on the cusp of the top 10 anyway. But yeah, it's an interesting thought, and it wouldn't. It's exactly like why, like when we have middleweight, 180 to 185, that's a 5-pound difference. And yet you go up to heavyweight and it's 40 pounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've always thought the same thing.
And just the jump between light heavyweight and heavyweight is it's like 205 is the cutoff, and then 265 is the cutoff.
Yeah.
There's a 60-pound difference in those two weight classes.
Yeah, it's I guess maybe the idea is that the UFC has always favored heavyweights. They're they're the oldest weight class.
Yeah, and light heavyweights because we've had John Jones and Iceman.
Yeah. And I think it's always been, I think it started out with just middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Maybe with lightweight in there somewhere.
Well, the very first UFC, there was just no weight classes.
Well, yeah. But when it started introducing weight classes, there was only like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So it seems like they've always favored heavyweight, and they understand that when it comes to these bigger guys, and there's so many of them that they leave that gap open, and they leave it so big so that they can give as many people as many opportunities as possible. Now, why it is that they do that with heavyweight versus all the other smaller weight classes is beyond me, because if we go back to just the preliminaries, Loreno, Staropoli missed weight by 3 pounds, and that's welterweight. Came in 3 pounds over 170. I'm pretty sure there must have been another one somewhere on the card, but that's the one that I remember off the top of my head. And it's like you've got guys that are in lower weight classes missing weight all the time because the rules and the limitations are so strict for them. And yet for people like Oleinik, people like Lewis, they've got all this range to cope with. And I understand it's difficult for guys like Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis walks around with at least an extra 20 pounds over the limit.
He's got to be close to 300 when he's walking around.
Exactly. And I understand it's difficult for him to be able to even make the 265 limit.
That's why we need an ultra heavyweight class too, where it's just sumos.
Yeah, I mean that would be cool too, because I mean like that's an.
If you just had guys like Butterbean fighting another Butterbean.
Oh my god!
Yeah. Can you imagine the hype?
That would be insane. But I mean, yeah, it's. I agree. It's true. I say to myself all the time. Because I was, obviously there's I think there was only one female women's card on this entire event, and it was the bantamweight division. And I've always asked myself, why aren't there more weight divisions in the women's class as well, like higher weight divisions?
I've thought about it as well.
Not every woman, because it goes up to bantamweight, and then it's bantamweight, strawweight, flyweight, feather and flyweight. It goes bantamweight, featherweight,
and then strawweight
at the very end. Or is that, or are we getting that mixed up? Is flyweight the one that's smaller than strawweight?
I think the strawweight is the smallest, because I think they only have strawweight and female.
Yeah. You're right. But yeah, it's why don't we have higher weight classes for the female division? Because there's not every female fighter is going to be 135 pounds or whatever the case. There's no lightweight for women's division.
Yeah, can you imagine the heavyweight women's division?
Yeah. Why not? We know there are heavyweight fighters out there in the world.
There is, because there's I saw one actually that was it might have been a kickboxing match though, but it was like 2 middleweight or something like that females that were just like both like 6 foot something.
Yeah. I'm pulling up just an old list right now.
But I think it's just one of those things where women's fighting hasn't been around that long in UFC history so far. Yeah. That eventually it'll open up more.
Yeah, I mean, women's MMA didn't become a thing in UFC until like 6 years ago. I mean,
just about, yeah.
I mean, women's MMA has always been around, a lot longer than it's been in the UFC. But in terms of
that's why I was just saying, in the UFC history, it's been a very short time that women have been allowed to fight. So I'm sure it's just one of those things where it's just taken a little bit.
So it's like, as soon as I would feel a lot better if, as soon as we get more women's weight divisions added, is probably when we'll start seeing a more regular other weight classes added, like a mid heavyweight or something like that. Because I think, there are those fighters out there. We want to give those fighters those same opportunities that these women are getting. And like I said, it's like, it'd be like if we had no weight division past welterweight,
Yeah,
like,
it would just not be the same.
Yeah. So I'm waiting on that. We're having to wait on mid heavyweight, and it's just got to make these weight classes, man.
But Chris Weidman made it back to middleweight, though.
Oh my God, how crazy was this? How crazy was this?
This is the only fight that I stood up for.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like really cheering Chris Weidman on, because I was like, oh, do you remember the first time me and you ever talked about Chris Weidman?
I think I'm trying to remember if we do, because the first time you and I ever talked about him wasn't it like right before he was about to have his fight with Dominic Reyes?
No, so it was even before that.
Okay,
so this
wow.
was, I remember very, very specifically, there was a conversation we had right before I moved into the apartment, and we were playing UFC 3, and I was just like, oh, I'm gonna play Weidman. And you're just like, who's that? I was like, oh, he was a really good fighter. He knocked out Anderson Silva. Then he fought Machida. He had a few more fights, and then he lost to Romero. And after that, he kind of just been downhill.
Yeah.
1 or 2 out of his last 7 fights he's won.
Yeah, he lost to Luke Rockhold. And then I remember that. I remember it went Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold, Michael Bisping.
Yeah.
And then George St. Pierre.
Yeah.
And then he retired, and then it was like up for grabs after that. But I remember Chris Weidman was in there.
Yeah, Whitaker had already had the interim championship before GSP retired.
Okay.
And then Izzy came around and just 3-piece comboed everybody.
Yeah. But those days.
Those are the days.
But yeah,
Chris Weidman, I was really cheering for it because he was doing so good in the first round.
Yeah.
Then his second round, what's his name, Garrett? You have it pulled up?
Yeah, Omari Akhmedov, Dagestani fighter, I believe.
I almost said Yair Latifi again.
Wow.
Because it's just a bald head, beard that doesn't have a mustache.
Yeah.
Just chin. It's just that look always makes me want to say Yair Latifi.
Yeah.
Then like second round, Chris Weidman didn't do as good. In this third round, he came back, did the same, had 3 whole minutes to control that round.
Yeah, you could kind of tell that Weidman's conditioning was probably not at 100% for this fight.
Yeah, it's hard to in this times of the world, but he's also getting a little old and hasn't had a fight go for very long recently.
Yeah. Excuse me real quick. I said Dagestani. He's just he is from Kizlyar, Russia. Excuse me. He's the Wolverine.
That's a good one.
Yeah. But yeah, the All-American Chris Weidman came out on top here. And he finished. Now the first round was kind of neck and neck, but he managed to finish on top, which is always really important when you're fighting. When you're going to decision, that's always something really big. There is you want to be able to have. Excuse me. You want to be able to end the round with a nice little stamp. And second round was kind of more of a Akhmedov show. It was more of just Weidman kind of gassing out a little bit. His conditioning was just kind of wearing off a little bit. But then in the third round, he managed to get on top right from the get-go in the third round. Just kind of managed to control the fight pretty much, the entire time.
And then ends with a flurry.
Yeah, ends with some really good elbows over the top. That was probably where most of the damage had been delivered at that point. Akhmedov's getting black eyes like right here. He's got some cut somewhere else on the other side of his face. But those elbows were probably the most vicious in that round. He delivered some good ones at the end of round 1 whenever he finished on top. But Chris Weidman, I think, really came into his own in that third round. Really just got what he wanted. Because Omari Akhmedov he's good in sambo. He's got the jiu-jitsu background a little bit, and Chris Weidman was just able to completely stick himself to his hips, keep him from pushing him off, keep him from. I mean, really the entire time in the round 3, Akhmadov was just struggling to get Chris Weidman off him. It was pretty crazy. So yeah, it was nice to see Chris Weidman really pull out a nice little victory here. If I were to look at this fight and then look at, where I see Chris Weidman going from here, he really needs to put some more effort into that gas tank. And obviously his wrestling is always going to be great. But the problem is that now you can't go a whole 3 rounds like that, and with a lot of these top tier fighters we're dealing with nowadays,
let alone 5.
Yeah. So hopefully, we see improvement in that in the future. This was a good performance overall, don't get me wrong. But if there were holes to fill, that was the most notable one. And it also felt like on the feet, Akhmadov still had a little bit of the advantage there. Chris Weidman's got good head movement, don't get me wrong, but it really felt like with Chris Weidman, it always feels like it always comes back down to the wrestling as his base, which is great. It's great to have that as your base, and it's great to have that to fall back on. But the problem is you can't overly rely on that. You can't always fall back to it, because you're not always going to have a fight like this between 2 grapplers and your grappling is going to be superior. You're going to have those fights where you meet an Israel Adesanya, or you meet a Robert Whittaker, or even a Darren Till, and if you can't box with those people, then the exact same stuff that happened in his light heavyweight bout against Dominic Reyes is going to happen, where you just meet an absolute power puncher and you're done. But that being said, Chris Weidman's chin was tested very well in this fight. He took a lot of good shots.
Yeah. There was one time he hit him and he did the whole, his jaw snapped back and forth. And I was like, oh, he's going to go to sleep. And then he didn't. And I was just like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
he displayed his toughness. Yeah. Shook it off.
Snapped back real fast.
Yeah. So that was impressive. Good on him. I can't wait to see where he goes from here. We'll just go ahead and we'll move down the list real quick. We've only got 3 fights left. And then I want to circle back around to Derek Lewis and Oleinik and possible future for them. But in the middleweight, we had Maki Pitolo versus Darren Stewart. We had a Hawaiian fighter versus a England fighter. And this one ended in round 1 through a guillotine choke for Darren Stewart. Which is very nice. I wanted to comment on this because I really liked how the guillotine was set up.
The technique where he had the chin.
Mm-hmm. Like he had already had his hand situated under the chin, before the takedown was fully initiated. Yeah. And so as soon as they went down, he just kind of completed it. So he was already setting it up on the feet. He's taken down, and then he was able to completely realize the guillotine. So that was very nice. I really like that.
And then he had the John Jones type squeeze where he pushes it up.
High elbow. And then
hands forward.
Yep. And then he locks he locks the leg of Pitolo so that he can't really fight out of it. And because they're situated up against the cage, Pitolo just doesn't have any room to fight.
Push him forward. Yeah, he can't flip over. He can't do nothing.
Yeah. And it was just really nice, after he gets the tap, Pitolo just, he wasn't frustrated. He wasn't mad. Obviously frustrated in so far as he respected the technique. He was just like, good job to you, Mr. Stewart.
Yeah.
It was textbook level perfect. It could not have been any perfect of a guillotine. So that was really cool. Good on him.
It's just one of those it's like just one of those textbook moves that everybody should know how to throw. You should know how to throw up a guillotine and somebody goes for a takedown, because they most of the time work.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of good guillotine attempts in this card. The first round preliminaries with Alakasi was trying to get a good guillotine. He really loves the guillotine. We saw other good attempts from that, but of course this was the only fight where that was actually completed to full, and it was done very, very, very well. And then so moving on to the women's bantamweight, this one was one that, not that I necessarily had an issue with it, but I did have some problems here. So this was a women's bantamweight between the number 8 ranked woman Yana Kunitskaya versus Julia Stolyarenko. Getting better at these names. I'm getting a lot better at these names.
Once you're starting to get the syllables of them better.
Yeah. So obviously, Yana Kunitskaya walked away with a decision victory here at the end of round 3.
What was your problem?
Not necessarily my problem, because with Yana, she knew what she wanted in this fight, and that was, I want to put my opponent up against the cage and smother her. I want to pepper her with these shots. I mean, she's getting some good hooks in there. Really good. Oh God, really good knees to the body. I mean, so good to a point where Julia is like screaming from the pain.
Yeah.
Of just hard knees to the body.
She's having to stand in very obscured version, just stand away from the cage and stand away from the knees and try to stand in a very obscure way.
Yeah. And it got to a point where Julia was so desperate, she's doing anything she can to do her jiu-jitsu.
Backpack.
Yeah, that was part of the thing I don't like. I actually really hate it when fighters do this thing where they literally pick themselves off the ground and just attach themselves to their opponent, because it doesn't do anything.
Just pulling guard in the air.
Pulling guard in the air has got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. And obviously,
unless you're all right, why'd I even try to pull this name out of my head if I didn't know it? All right, continue.
Oh, no, go ahead. You're on the spot now.
All right, who's the guy who Max Holloway beat and bashed his eyebrow or his eye socket in?
I don't know. I'll look up his record.
I'm sorry. It was
we're doing this.
It was against Cub Swanson, is who he pulled guard on Cub Swanson and got a guillotine like doing the thing standing.
So he got the submission on Cub Swanson?
Yeah. Whoever Max Holloway beat. I know this is a really weird, confusing thing. If you just look up who Max Holloway's last few fights were.
Volkanovski, Edgar, Poirier, Ortega, Aldo. It was
Ortega.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian Ortega.
Doctor stoppage. Yeah.
Ortega pulls the guard standing up really well.
Okay.
It's one of those things that if you shouldn't do it unless you know how to do it really well. Yeah. I'm sorry about this rabbit hole I put you on. I couldn't remember Ortega's name.
No, you're fine. I understand that. But like you said it. You hit it right on the nail. If you know how to do it, do it. But it's one of those things where it's really risky. Because first of all, the one big problem is that you're wasting a lot of energy just lifting yourself in the air like that. And especially if you're pressed up against the cage, because for the most part, it's not the other person you're wearing on, because they have the cage to prop you up against. You're the one that is wasting the muscles in your legs and your arms just trying to keep yourself up. And it's not necessarily going to drag them to the ground if they've got that cage to prop you up on. And this was really
the one time it did go to the ground, she did get really close to pulling off an armbar.
Yes, that was true. At the end of the second round, or the first round, I want to say second.
I think it was the second.
Yeah, it was very, she got really close to that armbar, no doubt about that. Can't deny that. But my biggest problem is that it leaves you open for slams. And we saw this on the Contender Series last week, in the first fight with Jordan Levitt against Luke Flores, or Luke Flores, if I'm not mistaken. Jordan Levitt versus Luke Flores. Flores, because Levitt's such a wrestling heavy guy, he was able to press him up against the cage pretty early. And Flores pretty much just threw himself into a takedown, or set himself up perfectly for a slam, when he pulls guard in the air, and Levitt did easily what Yana could have done against Julia by just leaving the cage, slamming you down. I mean, that is so simple to me that it's too risky. It adds another level of risk that you don't need to add in that situation. But that being said, I understand the desperation coming from Stolyarenko.
That's what I was going to say in a second. There's like not much else she could have done at that moment.
But that's where it brings me to my major problem that I had with it. The thing I had the most issue with was that this had to be one of the biggest mismatches that I have seen that has gone on all 3 rounds.
Yeah.
And it just frustrated me to the point, because there was, I don't know who was matchmaking this, but Stolyarenko just had, and God bless her, I'm sure she is an amazing woman, and I'm sure she is a great jiu-jitsu practitioner, fighter, whatever, but she just had no business being in that octagon with Yana. And I mean, it gets to a point where Yana almost has as much control time as there was time in the fight.
Yeah, that's what I know. I was like, she really Khabib'd her this whole fight.
I mean, by the time the round 3 starts, she's already amassed over 11 minutes of control time.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like it frustrates me, because I want, it just gets to a point where, she's wailing on the girl, she's embarrassing, this poor woman, and it gets to a point where there's nothing she can do unless she gets there on the ground, but that just isn't happening. Pulling the guard in the air isn't making that happen. And that was just another thing that was in credit to Yana, because she knew what she wanted. She did not want to take these takedowns. She didn't want these trips. She didn't want to go to the ground with this girl, and she knew she really didn't want to do that after that armbar in the second.
For sure.
So she knew, I can win this just by pressing her up against the cage, peppering her with my shots, getting her nice and bloody, and then it wasn't until like the last 40 seconds of the 3rd round did she say, all right, break away now. We'll stand up a little bit. Throw some kicks, whatever the heck. And then by that point, Stolyarenko is just so worn out and tired that, she's wobbly a little bit, from these strikes. She just doesn't have any kind of. No footing. So I don't know. It just kind of frustrated me, because I was like, this has got to be one of the most egregious things that I've seen. I mean, that's pretty much where it got me the most. I will say one of the funniest things about this is that, because pretty much just the entire fight, I mean, you knew from round 1 who was going to win the fight, just because, in my opinion, it was that big of a mismatch. And just the level of control Yana was able to exert over her opponent. It got to a point where it was so bad that you can see people in the background in the Apex Center that are just like on their phones, or just doing other nonchalant things, just not caring at all about the fight, because I mean, it's just so obvious who's gonna win. I mean, I thought that was
I
actually
started
pretty
reading
funny.
Sherlock Holmes.
Wow.
No, I did read a Sherlock Holmes story yesterday though, while I was waiting for the fights to start.
Yeah. Yeah. How's that?
It was actually pretty good. It was only like 5 pages.
What was it? What was it called?
It was called The Devil's Foot.
Okay.
It was like the Devil's Foot was like it was like an herb or something that was in the shape of a hoof. So that's why they called it the Devil's Foot, because it looked like it was like a goat's hoof.
Huh.
And it was like really dangerous poison.
Wow.
Yeah. So it just Sherlock Holmes trying to find out how this room full of people got poisoned.
And it was the devil's foot.
Yeah, it was like this herb that it's like the fear toxin that Scarecrow uses.
Okay, I got
Where
you.
you get so scared and like paranoid that you just die. Yeah.
Wow.
And then Sherlock and Watson take like a little bit of it to see what it's like.
And it fucks them up.
And you just go, ah! That's like pretty much how it's described. Is like Sherlock just jumps from his chair and starts screaming because they're all told from Watson's perspective.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Back to the MMA.
Oh yeah. Oh, excuse me. I must be really tired or something. But yeah, so that was the women's bantamweight. You know, good for Yana. I just think that whoever does the matchmaking really needed to get a bit of a slap on the wrist for that, because I thought that was a little ridiculous. But we have the opener to the main card, which was a lightweight bout between Benyel Dariush versus Scott Holtzman. This was kind of this was a good fight for Dariush, pretty much from the get-go. I mean, there was a few eye pokes, you know, here and there.
Check the tape.
Oh, that was so funny. Like
That's one of the best. I've always wanted a fighter to say, "Just wait, it's gonna show it in a second."
Yeah, and it was funny because the first time it was, you know, Dariush is rushing forward and Holtzman, you know, just puts his hand up to stop him and gets that little thumb in the eye. But the second time, it was like the guy's holding his hand right here, and Dariush straight up just slams his head into his finger.
The guy just goes, and then Dariush is like,
yeah, it was great. And then everybody was like, "Oh my god, what happened?" And Dariush was like, "Check the tape," and all we see is him just going, "Whoa." And that was a bad one too. That one was worse than the other one because he's like bleeding from his eye because of that. That was great. And it was funny too because Herb Dean was like, "All right, just keep him up," you know?
Yeah.
And it was like that's exactly what he did. He should have said, "Just keep him close, keep your hands closed." But for those of you that don't know, there are rules in the rule book about what you're supposed to do with your fingers. If you're gonna have your hand open, you can't have them like this.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing this, you can't do this. So that's why they say keep your fingers up.
Like high five.
Yeah. So if you do this, all you're doing is smacking them with your palm.
Yeah.
And so
it's hard to do with those gloves where it kind of does like this.
Yeah, where it's always like this. But that's why they say either keep them up or just keep them closed.
Yeah, or just put your fist up.
Yeah. So, yeah, do like curl them like that. But in that instance, it was funny because he literally was doing exactly what he was supposed to, and Dariush is the one that just slams his eye right into it. I thought that was really great, but. Yeah, so he comes in, he finished him. Really great finish, by the way. I mean, that's a
spinning. It's the first ever spinning forearm.
Oh yeah, because he almost hit him with the elbow, but I think he was definitely going for the back fist, and he just caught him right there with that lower part of the forearm.
Yeah,
and that was really nice. It was kind of like a small little like walk off KO too, because as soon as he smacked him, the guy was just like down. You know?
Yeah.
And Herb Dean was like,
and then Dariush was like,
Herb Dean was like, should I make him fight some more?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Dariush looks right at her team and goes, check the tape.
Check the tape. Oh man, yeah. So that was a good opener to the main card.
Had a little mishaps at the beginning, but delivered.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we only
All
got
right,
up
what do
to.
you think Derek Lewis is gonna do?
Oh man.
You know what I think?
What?
Do you want to know? Do you want to know what I think he should do?
What?
I think we should have Ngannou versus Lewis
Rematch?
rematch.
Really?
Winner gets Stipe. Win or lose, Stipe is gonna get the next heavyweight championship fight.
You think Stipe is gonna win against DC?
No, I was saying, regardless if DC wins or loses, he's gonna retire. He said already.
Yeah. So that means that
Stipe, either way, Stipe gets the next heavyweight fight after.
Right. Yeah.
Wins, he's gonna be the next person to defend it. If he loses, he's probably gonna be the person who's gonna fight for it against whoever.
Now, I've always thought. Now, I've looked up that same question you just asked me, and I have come across different ideas. Obviously, the most popular for a lot of people is the Ngannou rematch, but the way I view it is that because Stipe has already been asked if he wins, who do you see coming next, and it's always Ngannou. They always talk about the rematch everybody wants for Stipe after DC. DC is the Ngannou rematch. So in my mind, the Ngannou rematch with Stipe, if Stipe wins, or like you said, even if he loses, is still going to end up probably fighting for the championship, an interim championship, or fighting for the vacant title with Ngannou, is likely already set. Not necessarily set in stone, no contracts have been signed, but that's kind of what's on the mind of everybody. You know, Ngannou came pretty close to finishing Stipe pretty early on in their fight, but then Stipe came out, ended up winning, became, the baddest man alive. So in my mind, Ngannou's probably already set to fight off Stipe.
So with that said, who do you think Lewis would be fighting?
So there's a couple of options. The first one that's the most relevant to current events is winner of the Jairzinho Rosenstrike Junior Dos Santos matchup next week.
All right, that's option number one. What's behind door number two?
Door number two is Curtis Blades, which is another very, very likely matchup. Those two are the two biggest ones. And the third option that I saw was like the least popular. So I think it's the one that holds the least amount of water, but really anything can happen. We know.
Alistair?
No, not Alistair, because I know Alistair Overeem is working on a fight against Sakai.
Oh yeah, I did see that. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so they're doing that. They're doing their own thing. Which, fun fact, Kevin Holland, I'm pretty sure it's Kevin Holland, is a training partner with Sakai. Just fun fact, of how those two are linked together. Between this card and whatever future event that takes place on. But yeah, I see that being the two biggest things. I actually see Curtis Blades being a more appealing option for Derek Lewis.
That's what I would say too, because Curtis has good wrestling as well, which would provide a problem for Derek Lewis, but they both also have been more handsy lately.
Yes.
Curtis Blades doing the TKO of Junior Dos Santos. I think it could be a good matchup, but I'm with you on this one. Option number two for sure.
Yeah, they're both on hot streaks right now. Derek Lewis, has won the past few fights. He's on a tear. Yeah, past three.
He corrected Paul Felder.
Oh, did he?
Because he went, you win the last 4 fights. He goes, the last 3. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, big guy. I didn't want to. Yeah, like, they do that whole little bit.
Wow.
It was really funny.
But yeah, that's what I see being the most appealing. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. I mean, if Rosenstrike and Dos Santos fought, and depending on who wins there, that's I see that being a fight fit for whoever's the winner of that fight. I see probably being an appealing fight for loser of that. Probably is a good fight for Oleinik, who I don't know what he's going to be wanting to do after this fight. Maybe he'll want to fight loser of Overeem and Kasi Sakai. Sorry, I'm starting to get really scrambled.
I want Oleinik against JDS.
Yeah, I mean that'd be really good for both those guys, because I know JDS is still trying to climb. He's still trying to get that belt back, like all these guys are. But I know he's really on his grind.
JDS is the last person to finish Derek Lewis.
I mean, there you go. That
was like last year.
Yeah, so that'd be good for him. I know they really want that. The problem with Derek Lewis now is that he is such a monster now, more so than he used to be. He's a big name now, but I mean, like I said,
my balls is hot.
I gotta take a shit.
He's always got some meme. I feel like now he's trying to make it memes.
Yeah.
Where he's just like, this is every time I win, I gotta say something funny.
Yeah, but his conditioning's been really great, and he's on a tear. So
athletic. He's been more explosive.
Yeah, and he's got a lot more creativity to his striking now.
Along with his cardio getting better, that means his longevity in the fighting world is going to get better as well.
Yeah, especially at 35. I mean, that's a big deal. You definitely, because he's literally in the prime of his life right now. So to me, that just kind of spells, and if you can evolve as a fighter at this level, you can do so much. You can go so far. So that's good for him. I can't wait to see where he goes.
Especially when he's talking about trying to get down to 240.
Oh, I know. It's insane. And can you imagine what Derek Lewis? I mean, because he came in at 265 this time, but he still looked really trim. So
because there's just more muscle.
Yeah, so going down to 240. Oh my god!
He just comes in and it's Derek Lewis's face on Alistair Overeem's body.
Oof. I tell you, man, that would be something. But real quick, I wanted to ask you before we go off. There's a couple things. I think the first thing that popped in my mind that I wanted to talk to you about was that we haven't talked about it. I made a post about it on Reddit, but I didn't make a video on it. But I wanted to ask you about it. You heard that Yair Rodriguez was out against Zabit, right?
No, I did not hear that. He's not going to be able to fight?
No, apparently he injured himself because he trains like a madman or something. I don't know. I don't necessarily know what the circumstances were, but I think he injured his ankle and he's out against Zabit. And that happened. That was announced, I want to say, a week ago.
All right. Did not hear about it at all.
Yeah. So, and oh my god. So featherweight is kind of like stuck in the mud right now. And so that happened. And that fight we've been waiting for that fight since like 2018.
Yeah. I've been waiting for any Zabit fight.
Yeah. But Yair Rodriguez, of course, injured himself in 2018 and he couldn't fight. And in the past 2 years or 3 years or something, he's only fought twice, and it's been Jeremy
Against Jeremy
Stevens.
Stevens.
Yeah, both
Yeah.
times. So he was scheduled to fight at the end of August, on August 29th, against Magomed Sharipov, but injured himself, couldn't do anything. And then we were waiting for an update after the fact. Like, are we going to, who's going to fill in for Rodriguez against Sharipov? But then recently we got an update from Zabit himself saying that there was no opponent, there was no replacement, because he told the UFC, I'm not going to fight somebody who is below me. Like, I'm not going to fight someone who's not ranked. I'm not going to fight someone who's outside the top 10. So give me someone who is either, he said, either give me a title fight or give me a very challenging opponent. And he got no response. And so he said that he is not fighting at all August 29th. He's going back home. He's going to go train or do whatever, but he is not fighting at all August 29th.
UFC, you done fucked up.
I know. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Give him max.
Do what?
Just give him max.
Yeah. Even though Max Holloway just had a crazy ass rematch against Volkanovski.
Just give it to him.
Just feed him
Just
to
give it to
Zabit.
him. What's Max doing right now?
Yeah, recovering.
You know what Max would say if you
What?
told him that he had to fight Zabit? He'd go, "It is what it is."
It is what it is, baby. But yeah, so that's unfortunate. We don't know. We assume that whenever Rodriguez recovers, hopefully then they'll fight. They'll fight then.
2022, he's gonna get his ankle injured again, and go, Zabit, I can't fight, and Zabit just goes, "All right, I quit." Off to Bellator.
Oh man, yeah, it's pretty unfortunate, and you gotta feel bad for both guys. Rodriguez, you know, he's still a big name, even though he has his volume of fights hasn't been very big lately. But I mean, you know, people still like him. He's probably the most successful Hispanic fighter in the UFC from Mexico.
Have you seen him knock out the Korean Zombie?
Yeah.
That's one of the fucking. He goes so slumped. It hurts to watch his face hit the ground.
Yeah, he murdered that man. But yeah,
duck under elbow.
I mean, that kind of technique is just incredible. And obviously you got to feel bad for Magomed Sharipov as well, because I mean, you know, that's you prepare for a fight and then you end up not getting it, and then they want to try and give you somebody that, and I respect it on a certain level. You don't want to fight someone that's lower than you because you're training and you're fighting to fight the elite. You want to fight the elite. You want to build yourself up so you can get that title shot. But there is a positive to this. If Rodriguez really cannot fight until late 2021, perhaps, then there is a good chance Zabit could get a title shot against Volkanovski. Perhaps.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So that was pretty much that on that subject. I don't know what else I've got for you, except what are your predictions for next week's UFC pay-per-view, UFC 252?
All right, so right off the back, I'm going to go ahead and say Sean O'Malley for the win.
Okay, against Chito Vera.
Yeah. I'm already calling it, but
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and put 100 on Sean. I'm not going to get anything back because he's going to win, and it's not going to be the underdog. It's not. I'm just going ahead and say it.
Yeah.
Then Stipe is going to knock out DC.
Okay. Oh, wow. He's going to knock him out.
Yeah, it's going to be like putting Old Yeller to bed. It's going to be a really sad night.
Oof. Oh, man. You're vicious.
You're going to have to watch it.
You're vicious.
I'm not. I'm being truthful. It's just how I see it. Because there's usually, like, whenever you ask me how I see a fight going, I'm like, all right, so this is what I think is actually going to happen, and this is my dream scenario of what I want to happen.
Right.
So in what I've seen in the last two fights, Stipe is going to just trash him.
Okay. Fuck.
It's not even gonna be fun. We're both gonna be like, I'm gonna be texting you, going, "Why are we watching Stipe Club Baby Seals right now?"
Oh my god! Holy shit! You're disrespecting one of the greatest of all time.
I know.
Oh
And
my
that's why
lord!
it's sad.
Holy shit!
Because Stipe,
I'm sorry.
Stipe is just gonna be the baddest of all time for a while.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think the I've heard from both men they're having, or at least I've heard this from DC, that he is a little worried about his conditioning. What do you think of the fact that both men don't necessarily have, because they can't go to the gym? What do you think about them not having a fully fleshed out fight camp? And how do you think that's going to impact their fight going into this?
That's why I think Stipe is going to be the one to win, is because DC's cardio wasn't the best the last time they fought. So now it being even worse, and you put in those accumulations of body shots and trying to get takedowns, and then Stipe's boxing and everything, I think DC is just not going to be able to handle it.
Let me ask you this. What about if because now knowing that that's what DC is going to have to deal with and what he's going to have to go through, because you could argue that Daniel Cormier just really underestimated Stipe in their second fight, because he knocked Stipe out cold in their first fight, round 1. And he probably just did not expect Stipe to come as prepared as he was for their second fight. Now that both men have a knockout under their belt for each fighter, do you think that's going to carry over for Daniel Cormier, and Daniel Cormier is going to have a new battle plan ready? Like, he's going to be even more prepared.
Yeah, I think he is going to try. It's not going to be the same as the last 2 fights. I think this one's going to be different, but I believe the outcome will be similar to the last one. But real quick, there's a cute little thing happening. Little snake's poking his head out. I don't know if you can see him. He's poking his little head out.
I think I see him down there. Oh yeah, I see him.
But yeah, he likes to dig into his little bedding, and I just thought it was cute that he poked his little head out, because then I saw like.
Yeah, nice. Final question on DC versus Stipe 3.
Yeah.
Because it's taking place in the UFC Apex Center, and the Octagon is approximately
the 25-foot ring,
20% smaller, what do you think that the size difference is going to impact the fight a certain way, and why so?
So I haven't really noticed it affect any of the other fights.
Correct.
And that we've had in the ring. I don't even I could kind of notice that it's smaller, but for once the fights start, you don't really notice it as much.
Yeah, I've actually seen the numbers, and there's actually there's not really a difference between the numbers of finishes between the regular sized Octagon, say from Fight Island, and the Apex Center Octagon.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a psychological thing.
Yeah, but then what DC was saying is that his wrestling is going to be more on point because he has less room to escape.
Bring your wrestling shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. He said Steve is going to win. Sean O'Malley's going to win. Who do you think is going to beat? Who do you think is going to win between Dos Santos and Rosenstrike?
I give this one to Rosenstrike.
Yeah. Now, do you think this is going to be by KO or decision?
I think this one goes all 3 rounds.
Okay. I think it's going to be it's going to be hard. These are both heavy hitters. The problem with Dos Santos is that he has been doing this thing lately where all he does is just leap forward and throw this big uppercut.
No, he's always done that.
I mean, he's always done that, but I mean, like, you can
he's always been that guy.
You can
now everybody just knows it's coming.
You can just tell that he leaves himself open too much.
Yeah, It's just one of those things where he's always done it, but now he's just lazily doing the same thing he's always done.
Yeah, and for the remainder of the fight card, I think John Dotson's going to be his opponent. I mean, his opponent is a much fresher fighter, but I think John Dotson's probably going to be able to take it, maybe. But that's just because I have faith in Ultimate Fighter alumni. Probably shouldn't, but we'll see. And then
I
we've
feel
got.
I
Go ahead.
feel like Ultimate Fighter alumni are way harder than Contender Series alumni.
Yeah, because they fought through like a tournament of people
Yeah.
just to win. So I have faith in the Dotster. Excuse me. And then the final fight on the card here, we've got for me the much anticipated rematch between Magomed Ankalaev and Ion Kutabella.
Oh yeah, I forgot
Yeah.
that was on this card.
Or is it? I said Kutabella, but I got the L and the B backwards. It's Kutalaba.
Yes, we'll go
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, sure. I'll leave it at that. I'll call him Ion or Ion or whatever.
Yeah, it's
But
gonna
I am
be
super excited about that. And
it's gonna be a real slobber knocker of a fight.
now, besides the fact that it got prematurely stopped in their first fight, I still think Magomed is going to be able to win here, just because he
That's what
was
I was
he
thinking
was
too.
trashing on the first fight. Like, he was just trashing him to the point where he was literally beating the shit out of him so much. The ref and everybody else at the time was like, "Oh my god, he's knocked him out cold on his feet."
Yeah,
But
and
then
then he was like,
again,
"What?"
yeah. But then again, of course, that was Kutalaba who was really playing up, the drama of him getting hit
Yeah,
like that. But yeah,
exactly.
so that's our predictions for UFC 252. If you've got anything else, sir, speak now, forever hold your peace.
I'll see you next week.
Alrighty. All right. We will see you guys next week and beyond. See ya. Do.